Welcome to the Sun today for January 7th, 2022. Well, what are we going to talk about today? Well, first of all, we'll start off with sunspots. We've had a couple of small flares. Take a look at what CMEs have been around. See what the status of the solar wind is, and consequently the state of geospace, and then any other business. We've had a big increase in the number of sunspots over the last 24 hours. There, of course, active region 2924, the big region in the southeast here, and you can see a blow up of it to the bottom right. And that region has been increasing in complexity in the number of sunspots. I actually think it's two regions are very close together, and we'll see whether that is in fact the case as time goes by. The other numbered region is 2925 in the southeast corner. It's a small region, and at the moment it seems to be about stable, so we'll see what happens to that over the coming days. There's a tiny spot, a pore in fact, just out ahead of region 2924, and I doubt that that will be with us for very long. There's another pair of spots just to the north of these two numbered regions. This region seems to be increasing in its activity. This morning there was only one small spot there, now we have four. So I'm expecting that to continue to grow at least for a short time. Again, there's another tiny spot just behind it. You can see it here in the white circle. Again, I don't think that's going to be with us for very long. And then near the southeast limb, we have yet another region which shows one large spot. I expect that one will probably grow over the next few days. I should point out that my sunspot designations are unofficial. This is the official record by the Solar Influences Data Center in Belgium. The green curve is from last month, and the red curve are the tentative values so far this month. And you can see that the sunspot number has risen to about 50 in the last couple of days. If you go back one Carrington rotation, so we have exactly the same face of the sun towards us, you can see last time we had almost no sunspots on the sun at this particular time. That indeed shows a growth in the number of sunspots over the last 4 weeks. Along with the increase in sunspot numbers, the X-ray background has been increasing and has increased by a factor of 4 over the last couple of days. You can see it here. And there you can see also we've had a couple of C flares, which I'll show you the videos of in a second. The first video will use the SDO HMI instrument Sunspot movie, and it will run from the 2nd to the 7th of January 2022. Here comes region 2924 over the southeast limb. Notice how the northern part of it develops first, then the southern. That's why I think it's two regions. The next video will look at the solar corona, particularly the flaring corona, and that will be using the AIA instrument and looking at the Iron 18 movie at about 6.4 million degrees Kelvin. There's the first C flare, and there's the second. Last but not least, we go to a different spacecraft, the SOHO spacecraft, and use the LASCO coronagraph and see what CMEs we've been having over the recent few days. Now in this movie we're looking for CMEs off the east limb. There is one off the west limb, a nice one, but so far not very much off the east limb. There's a faint one in the far northeast. And an even fainter one in about the area that we're looking for, but otherwise not very much going on at all. The solar wind has been relatively quiet so far this week. The BZ component, that's this red line, has been very close to 0, which means there's no particular chance of the magnetic field in the solar wind reconnecting with the Earth's magnetosphere causing aurora. The density has been relatively low at about 3 or 4 particles per cubic centimeter. The speed has been relatively low, going all the way down to 300 kilometers per second, about as low as it can get. And the reason for that, there's very few coronal holes on the sun, and I've just circled the only one visible to me on the sun at the moment, and that one is relatively tiny. And then lastly, the temperature has dropped down to about 10,000 degrees Kelvin, which means most of this material is coming from the lower parts of the solar atmosphere. With such a quiet solar wind, it's not surprising that geospace is also very quiet. The KP index, a measure of the amount of activity in the magnetosphere, is right at 0 for most of the last couple of days, and that's very unusual. And I'm not seeing it changing very much in the near future. Okay, so what do we have to come in the next few days? Using helioseismology, we can image the far side of the sun. And those purple and green splodges on the right-hand side of this picture are images of sunspots on the far side of the sun. So you can see we're about to get two moderate regions come over the east limb of the sun in the next few days. Then there's a very large spot group almost on the exact opposite side of the sun to the Earth at the moment, which will be around here in 7 or 8 days. So that's very much to look forward to. So what conclusions can we draw from all of this? I'm surprised that the region 2925, the large region, has not produced more flares and larger flares than it has already. We've seen this pattern before in the southern hemisphere of producing very, very large and strong sunspots, but not producing that many flares. I'm hoping that process will change shortly. Geospace will remain relatively quiet unless we get into some big CMEs next week from regions like 2925 and 2924. No solar cycle 24 regions for the last 2 months, and I very much doubt that we're going to get very many from now on. It was, I think, 7 months prior to that last region that we had another solar cycle 24 region. So most of this is all solar cycle 25, and we'll see the number of solar cycle 25 sunspots rising throughout 2022. We can expect an uptick in solar activity over the next few days, given those large sunspots coming over the eastern limb. And who knows, other sunspot groups may well develop in the meantime. So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.